Top of the morning, Airbnb family. This is breaking news. And actually, this is kind of nuts. This is going into effect this week, by the way. So, this is a new policy I need to share with you so you can make the changes you need to make because we're using softwares, we're using technologies that Airbnb is banning. Like, they're just like ban hammer. And first, let me tell you why they're banning this. And here's what you have to do about it. Airbnb has given opportunities to us hosts to grow businesses, but some of these businesses are big. Sonder went public with 9,000 listings. Stay Alfred went out of business with 3,000. But there's plenty of other companies like that, whether they're the Zeuses of the world or the Stay Alfreds or the Sonders or even some people that I know, 400, 500 listings like in New Mexico or even here in the States, just all over the world. We're talking about over 100,000 listings plus of professional operators that are doing one thing that Airbnb is trying to stop. And this is nuts. So Sonder will get a customer on Airbnb and the customer will go to arrive to a Sonder property. And Sonder's like, well, here, download our app because you need it to access the door. You cannot come to our place without like launching our own proprietary stuff. And this is one of the main things that Airbnb is trying to stop because Sonder uses this you need our app as a way to get all their information, get a relationship with them. So the first time someone books on Airbnb might be the last time that they book an Airbnb. If they book a Sonder, Sonder has listings all over the country / world, and they're trying to like win those customers into the Sonder pipeline. And Sonder's far from the only one. So Airbnb, as a countermeasure to keep all of their Airbnb guests on the platform, are like launching this very week a new off-platform policy that makes a bunch of key changes that's meant to fight Sonder's off-platforming, but it will also affect all of us too. So I've got 5 screenshots I want to show you from the policy. The entire policy is in the description, okay? So you can read the whole thing. But first one, obviously, is the customer information. So you cannot sell, share, or use guest contact information for marketing communications or guest stuff, right? So now, the thing about this is we now have to find out if that means if we cannot use StayFi, or if that means that we cannot use, well, TouchStay I think is out. Okay, so we're gonna talk about that in a second. But StayFi is the one where you have somebody like to use your Wi-Fi, they have to get their email first. There's an email gate. Well, now here's the part that we have to find out if we're safe or not. StayFi, since they gave us our email and they opted in, it may not count as customer information anymore, okay? May not. But if Airbnb tries to argue that you got that email from the guest somehow on the guest platform and not from the gateway, they could try to ban you. All of this is like you're subject for delisting for any of these violations, by the way. So another one here. This is another one that I think is unfair. The reason why I want to show you this is it says hotels may collect payments. So Airbnb is banning the collection of payments off platform for fees like taxes, anything like that. They're saying that all of the fees that you collect must be either listed in one of the mandatory fee sections or it must be baked into your nightly rate. You cannot have a parking fee like that is a separate fee that you list if it was mandatory. So they're saying that hotels though can have optional fees that they collect, but you have to be a hotel partner. This comes up multiple times in their language. And so I'm going to get tangential. I want to explain this too. What Airbnb is doing is treating hosts and hotels differently. See, Airbnb wants the hotel's business. So if a hotel lists on Airbnb, Airbnb is going to be like, all right, Mr. Hotel, you can do X, you can do Y, you can do Z, you can collect your own security deposits, you can collect incidentals if you want to, but hosts, no. We own the guests, we own you, is what Airbnb is saying. So Airbnb is not going to let you have the same permissions that hotels have because they want the hotel's business and they think that you work for Airbnb, is what all this basically says. So this next one is Airbnb, you may not ask guests to review an Airbnb stay off the platform. That includes a survey card, right? You can't have a card that the housekeeper leaves, tell us about your stay, any feedback in the moment. You are not allowed to do that. Airbnb is claiming that you're withholding information from the community. And this is one that I'm personally upset about because as an operator, we want to know stuff that we can use to improve. We want the data to know where we can improve our business. And we want the guest to give us that information whenever they're willing to. But to give Airbnb information that would then get obfuscated or delayed or lost in translation or even modified, because when a guest gives us their feedback in confidence, that's one thing. But then to go to the Airbnb platform and write something, they're probably going to change their tone. They're going to leave whatever else out. They're going to decide some things aren't worth it, or they're going to be performative because they're talking to Airbnb instead. So we lose the ability to get in confidence real information from guests because we're not allowed to take a survey. Because Airbnb wants to force everybody to go through Airbnb's review system so they can further push good listings up and bad listings down and enforce their non-circumvention policy for listing removal. This is to remove bad listings from big operators and not let those big operators get private feedback from guests. Still, like, this is a little softer in a way, won't affect most of you guys, but that's absolute insanity, in my opinion. Totally insane. So this is the big one, guys. So many of you use TouchStay or Enzo Connect or Guesty Locks, like whatever, right? Now, if you have a fob system that uses an app, right, you can no longer force someone to use an app or access an app as a means in which they access your home. It has to be optional. So you have to give them a hard copy key or a keyless code. You cannot have them go off the Airbnb platform and have to waive something in order to get in. And this is what's really meant, we're backwards here. This is what's really meant to attack Sonder. Sonder's system is download an app and like clock in through your phone. And there's so many other systems that do the same thing. This is the part that's going to destroy 100,000 plus listings right here. So you have to be super, super careful. If you guys have a system like that, it has to be an option. You cannot push anybody to download your proprietary software or a third-party app or anything. They have to be given a code. And I think there's a bigger fat one piece here. Where'd it go? All the way to the top? There it is. Okay, cool. So you cannot ask guests to create a separate account or register on another website besides Airbnb. You cannot ask them to do so, which means that you cannot ask them to use TouchStay. You cannot ask them to use your own website, whatever. You cannot ask guests to install a third-party app. Now, I know Boostly is probably going to be pissed about this too, or maybe Boostly is going to take credit for this. There are so many hosts that are trying to off-platform guests in order to get them like rebooked. Now, I didn't take screenshots of all the stuff that you kind of expect with an off-platform policy, but I'll review it for you. An off-platform policy says you cannot collect money off Airbnb. You cannot encourage direct bookings. You cannot cancel somebody's stay so that way you can book them direct. You cannot extend somebody's stay direct. You cannot like try basically to circumvent Airbnb's like booking platform. And the mandatory, like you can't take money off of Airbnb except for if you're a hotel partner, you can take money for optional things. Now, this is really going to affect us for retailing. Companies like the Hostco that sell optional upgrades like massages and stuff, this could, if Airbnb gets really aggressive, this could affect the Hostco. If Airbnb is super aggressive, this will affect StayFi. If Airbnb gets hyper aggressive, this will affect all like people's like guest books and arrival like stuff like that. It'll affect channel managers like Hostfully and stuff like that. It's gonna be crazy. Now, Airbnb does say that if you're a certain software connected partner, you can collect security deposits, and then they point you to just a generic part about channel managers. So I do think you can collect a security deposit if you have a channel manager. I think that's what they're saying. But then they're basically claiming for any damages or any resolutions, you have to go through Airbnb's AirCover. But we all know how AirCover is. It's hit or miss. So now here's what I think, though. I think we have more firepower. This is because this is one of my favorite parts about this industry, right? We do this with arbitration too, right? We have to formulate arguments. And if Airbnb takes away our ability to defend ourselves as hosts, to mitigate the risks, then we can go and say Airbnb was negligent and they were forceful in the way they control their contracts. It was an overreach. Basically how Uber got sued for people not being independent contractors. This new policy, defanging hosts and their ability to run their own independent businesses the way that they see fit, because Airbnb is trying to control that, this policy could blow up in Airbnb's face and turn into a class action lawsuit because they're defanging hosts. But they're like what it's called a torturous interference is what my attorney would call this, is torturous interference if we were going to sue. I don't intend on suing Airbnb anytime soon anyway. But the point is they've taken away our ability to collect cash to pursue guests for damages or losses, and so you have to rely on AirCover. But then if AirCover doesn't give us correct due process and doesn't sufficiently make us whole, there will be a class action lawsuit on our hands or their hands. So you just needed to know this. Check the policy down below. Love you guys. Hit me in the comments with questions. I've got to get on a Zoom with my students. I teach my Cracking Superhost every Saturday, so I got to prep for that. Otherwise, it'd stay longer. With that said, I'll see you on the other side.